So where is Resident Evil 8, guys? A follow-up to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard? One of, if not the most terrifying game I have ever seen or played in my life, guys. Resident Evil 7, just to give you guys a little bit of some history here, Biohazard was terrifying, and I've played I'm really into the horror genre, guys. In video games, I love playing them. You know, Gears of War has horror elements to it. Dead Space, I think, is one of those terrifying experiences, as well as like the Fear franchise. And so I'm kind of coming into, when I went into Biohazard, I was kind of coming into like this, place where I've watched a lot of horror movies, I've played a lot of horror games, and I really do enjoy them. But there was something about Biohazard that was very unnerving to me, and I definitely want to come back to that story and into the franchise once again. But Resident Evil 8, I want to see if they're going to continue onwards with something similar to like what they did in 7, something that's absolutely terrifying. My biggest takeaway from Resident Evil 7, though, was, guys, that I really want them to go, and that being Capcom, I want them to go in a direction where you can play the single-player story, but there's other ways that you can kind of get involved in that universe, that being like multiplayer modes and such. And I always say this on so many occasions, guys, that it's really important to have a full package of a game, and that's one thing I'm really hoping for with Resident Evil 8. So let's talk about Resident Evil 8 and where is this game at this point. So let's talk about it. And an article, guys, that was written by Tom Phillips of Eurogamer, it sounds like Capcom will stick to first person for Resident Evil 8. Capcom's unannounced but inevitable Resident Evil 8 will retain the first person gameplay of predecessor Resident Evil 7, according to a new report on the project from fan site Biohazard Cast via YouTube channel Residents of Evil. It also tallies with what Eurogamer has heard independently of the game from sources close to publisher Capcom. Resident 7's first-person viewpoint being kept in Resident 8 is something of a surprise several years after the former's oddball virtual reality origins. The shift to first-person was a huge departure for the series, and one which Capcom has steered clear of implementing in its recent Resident Evil remakes. But it also makes sense as a way to distinguish the two series branches Capcom is currently developing, as remakes such as Resident Evil 2 and 3 revive the series' origins for nostalgic fans, while 7 and 8 offer a more experimental future. The above report in Resident Evil 8 also mentions the return of 7 protagonist Ethan and classic Resident character Chris Redfield, neither of which will be a surprise to fans. It also suggests we'll see werewolf-like enemies, proper zombies, and a female apparition which chases you through castle and village environments. Capcom is currently working on a BV of Resident Evil projects, not least the Resident Evil 3 remake due in April, and Resident Evil Resistance, which will be released as that game's multiplayer portion. While still a ways from release, it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. Resident Evil 8, or whatever it ends up being called, is also on that list. When contacted for this story, Capcom told Eurogamer it did not comment on rumors and speculation. So this is very interesting, guys. Here's what I'm excited about. So you got the Resident Evil remakes, okay? We've got a Resident Evil 3, which obviously is also going to have the Resident Evil Resistance, which of course is the game's multiplayer portion, which is very exciting, okay? I'm very excited to see where they go with Resident Evil 8, though. Are they going to make it an absolutely terrifying experience like they did with Biohazard? I really hope they do, because, man, it was so unnerving, guys, and I would love to see that continued. I'd also like to see their take on a Resident Evil first-person shooter, horror type, have horror elements to it, but also in a multiplayer, segment, or, have like a horde mode, or have like, different co-op modes and things of that nature to continue traversing and being able to connect with the universe. Now, obviously, they want you to be able to do those things in the Resident Evil remakes, but I really want to be able to do those things in, of course, in and around the new games, the Resident Evil, 8, Resident Evil 7, other ways that you can connect with these franchises is a very important thing to me, at least, because there's only so many times you can play the story over and over again. Before it sometimes, you kind of move on to another game. Obviously, I think Capcom would be very smart to go ahead and add multiplayer elements to Resident Evil 8. Here's my thing, though, is that Capcom, obviously, they're the creators of the, Devil May Cry series, and they don't really have multiplayer in there as well. Now, there have been talks of it, trying to keep those fans and those, the community in Devil May Cry to bring them back to that franchise, and I think that's a really good move on their part. We're going to have to kind of wait and see, though, guys. I'm hoping, and I have a ton of expectation for Resident Evil 8. I think that this could be something that is not only terrifying, but could continue evolving the Resident Evil franchise as a whole. I'm really excited about it. Let me know what you guys all think in the comment section below. And for all and more Resident Evil 8 based videos and content, stay right here with Zero TV.